There is a man standing in front of you right now, and you cannot see his face because his face is your own 10 years from today. He is not angry. That would be easier. He is just tired in a way sleep doesn't fix. And if you asked him what happened to the life he thought he'd be living, he would tell you the truth that nobody wants to hear. Nothing happened. No tragedy, no disaster, no villain. Just 10,000 small surrenders, one quiet day at a time, each one so tiny it never felt like a decision at all. That's the part that should scare you. Not failure, drift. Because here's what almost nobody tells you: when you're young and hungry and full of plans, you don't fall apart all at once. You erode. One skipped morning. One scroll instead of one page read. One "I'll start Monday" that somehow has been said every Monday for 3 years. And the strange, cruel beauty of it is that each individual choice feels harmless. It's only when you stand far enough back, like looking at a canyon, that you see what 10,000 small choices carved. I want to tell you about a man I'll call Daniel, because his story isn't really his, it's a mirror, and you'll recognize your own reflection in it before I'm done. Daniel was 26, sharp, ambitious, the kind of guy who talked about his 5-year plan at parties. He had a mentor once, an older man who ran a small but respected company, who told him something Daniel brushed off as old man wisdom. The mentor said, "Son, you don't decide your future, you decide your habits, and your habits decide your future for you." Daniel nodded politely. He thought he understood. He didn't. For the next several years, Daniel did what most people do. He worked hard at his job, hard enough to look busy, hard enough to feel productive, but he gave the leftover hours of his life away for free. Television, scrolling, snacking through boredom. He never sat still long enough to actually feel. None of it felt like betrayal. It felt like rest. It felt like he'd earned it. But here's what most people miss. Rest that restores you and rest that erases you look identical from the outside. The only difference is what you're avoiding. Daniel was avoiding the version of himself that required discipline. And avoidance, when you practice it daily, becomes a personality. 10 years passed the way 10 years always do, slowly in the day and instantly in the rearview mirror. Daniel woke up one ordinary Tuesday, looked at his life, and felt something he hadn't expected. Not devastation, but a dull, quiet ache. The ache of almost. He wasn't broke. He wasn't broken. He was just behind a version of himself he used to believe in. And that gap between the man he could have been and the man he'd settled into being, that gap had a sound. It sounded like silence where ambition used to live. This is the part of the story where you'd expect me to say he hit rock bottom and transformed overnight. He didn't, and that's where everything changes, because the truth nobody puts in the highlight reel is this. Nobody transforms in a single moment. They transform in a single decision, repeated on the days it's inconvenient. Daniel's mentor, before he passed, had said one more thing that Daniel only understood a decade later. He'd said, "Discipline weighs ounces, regret weighs tons." At 26, that sounded like a fortune cookie. At 36, it felt like a verdict. Let's pause here because there's a deeper layer underneath this story, and it's the one that actually matters to you, right now, listening to this. Time doesn't punish you the way a storm does, violently all at once so you can see the damage and rebuild. Time punishes you the way rust does, quietly, invisibly, until one day the structure that should be holding weight simply isn't there anymore, and you're left wondering when exactly it gave way. The answer is, it gave way every single day you didn't reinforce it. You just weren't watching closely enough to notice. This is why willpower is the most overrated word in self-improvement. Willpower is a muscle you can flex maybe once or twice a day before it's exhausted. Habit is gravity. Habit doesn't ask you how you feel. It just operates for you or against you every single hour, whether you're paying attention or not. The people you admire, the ones who seem to have some otherworldly drive, they are not stronger than you in the moment. They've simply removed the moment from the equation. They built systems so the decision was made years ago, and now their life just executes it on autopilot. That's not magic. That's architecture. And here's the part that should sit uncomfortably in your chest. Every day you postpone building that architecture, you're not standing still. There's no neutral gear in a human life. You are either compounding toward the person you want to become, or you are compounding away from them. Stillness is an illusion sold to people who are afraid of the math. Think about money for a second, because the metaphor is almost too perfect. A small amount invested daily over decades becomes a fortune, not because the amount was large, but because time multiplied it. Now think about your attention, your discipline, your skill, your health the same way. Every disciplined hour is a deposit. Every wasted hour is a withdrawal. And compound interest doesn't care about your excuses. It doesn't care that you were tired, that the day was hard, that you deserved a break. It just adds or subtracts silently forever. So what do you do with that? Not guilt. Guilt is useless. It just sits in your stomach and changes nothing. What you do is smaller and harder than guilt. You decide today what your floor is, not your ceiling, your floor. The minimum standard you will not go below, no matter how you feel. Because the people who win long-term are rarely the most motivated people in the room. Motivation is a mood. It comes and goes like weather. Winners are the ones who built a floor low enough to maintain on their worst days and just kept stepping on it day after day until the floor itself became unrecognizable from where they started. Until their worst day now would have been their best day 5 years ago. That's the real secret hiding underneath all the speeches about success. It was never about big moves. The dramatic reinventions, the New Year's resolutions, the all-or-nothing pushes, those make for good stories and terrible results. What actually changes a life is something almost embarrassingly unglamorous. The boring repetition of slightly better choices, made so consistently that they stop being choices and start being identity. Daniel, somewhere around year 11, finally understood his mentor's words, not as wisdom, as a debt notice. He didn't overhaul his life. He picked one habit, just one, and protected it like it was the only thing standing between him and that tired man in the mirror. Then another, then another. Nothing about year 12 looked dramatic from the outside. But underneath, the architecture had begun rebuilding itself, quietly, the same way it had quietly collapsed. So let me ask you something, and I want you to actually sit with it instead of letting it slide past you like every other piece of advice you've heard this week. If nothing changes, if you keep the exact habits you have right now, the same mornings, the same evenings, the same small surrenders, what does your life look like in 10 years? Not in theory, specifically. Picture the apartment, the body, the bank account, the relationships, the look on your own face in the mirror. If that picture doesn't scare you a little, you haven't looked closely enough. And if it does scare you, good. That discomfort is not your enemy. It's the only honest advisor you have left, because it's the one voice in your life that refuses to lie to you to make you feel better. You don't need a new plan. You don't need more motivation. You need one habit today that your future self would thank you for with tears in his eyes, because he'll know exactly how close you were to never starting at all. The man at the end of this road is being built right now, in this very moment, by what you choose to do after you stop watching this. He's not waiting for you in the future. He's being assembled one quiet decision at a time, starting now. So choose like he's watching, because he is.